Part 2. Between Two Worlds, U.S. English edition. The conviction in Finn's eyes was a fire that burned straight through logic. Kai spent the next 2 days drifting in a feverish fog. Every thought pulled back to the man's words. Gareth's spell is strong. It wiped your memory clean. In group therapy, Finn returned to silence. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It was no longer empty, it was charged, waiting. He watched Kai with the patience of a teacher, observing a slow student. Jake smoked his imaginary cigarettes. Eliana whispered about her blue shields, and Terrence went on about coping tools. Everything felt ridiculous, like a cheap stage play performed at the edge of an abyss only two people could see. Kai's instinct was to bury himself in facts. He combed through Millwood's dusty archives late at night, far from Dr. Shaw's watchful eyes. Finn's original admission file was there, dated 1974. The diagnosis: paranoid schizophrenia, elaborate, grandiose, and persecutory delusions. The description of his delusion made Kai's blood freeze. The patient insists he is the rightful monarch of a fantastical land called Navoras, located behind the Moss Stone in the northern hills. Claims an enemy named Gareth Lair has sent an army of minions to seize his castle. Effects fluctuate between catatonic apathy and intense agitation when questioned about his kingdom. It was the plot of his father's book, word for word in the major beats, except this file was more than 8 years older than the publication. He found more. Visitor logs. In the late 1970s, one authorized visitor name appeared again and again: Dylan Ross. His father's internship notes. Narrative listening sessions. Patient responds well to validation of internal universe. World rich in detail. Validation. His father hadn't been studying Finn. He'd been learning from him. Harvesting stories. The awful truth took shape like a bruise spreading under the skin, the world-famous bestseller. The foundation of the Ross family fortune, the story Kai despised for symbolizing his father's final escape, had been born from the fractured mind of the man in Group C. The anger that rose in him was sharp and bitter. It was theft, exploitation, and worse, a romanticized lie. While Dylan Ross gained fame and comfort, Finn wasted away in institutions. His kingdom reduced to a diagnosis and a moldy file. He confronted Dr. Shaw in her office, Finn's diary clutched in his hand. "You knew," he said, voice trembling despite his control. "You knew about my father. You knew about him and Finn." Dr. Shaw let her glasses slide down her nose. Her look wasn't surprise, it was exhaustion. "Yes, Kai, I knew." Dylan Ross was a brilliant connection, Kai snapped. "He used him. He mined a sick man's mind and sold it as a fairy tale." "And do you think Gabriel cares about royalties?" she shot back. "Your father gave him something no medication ever did: dignity. In a world that told him he was only a madman, Dylan Ross told him he was a king. That matters, Dr. Ross. Maybe it's the only thing that ever mattered here." Kai shook his head, refusing. "That's pathological enablement. Look at him. Finn believes the fantasy is real. He's trapped in it." "And you're so trapped in your own reality," she answered calmly, "that you can't see both of you might be wrong. You definitely can't see that the only man here locked in a dungeon, metaphorical or not, is you." He stormed out, humiliated and furious. The only person who might understand this collision of worlds was Maya. He found her at the town library, surrounded by stacks of books on local flora. Her smile faded instantly when she saw his expression. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said, closing a heavy book. "Worse," he said. "I saw the origin of a fairy tale." The words poured out: Finn's diary, the dates, his father's visits, the perfect overlap between delusion and fiction. Maya listened, her green eyes darkening. When he finished, she sat in silence for a long moment, fingers tracing the worn spine of a book. "Have you read it?" she asked. "What, never was? Have you actually read your father's book? Not as a kid, as an adult?" Kai said nothing. The answer was no. Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a battered copy, the same edition with the boy and the flying pig facing a shadowed forest. She opened to a marked page and read aloud in a soft voice that filled the dusty air. "Wizard Gareth, once a keeper of light, let envy seep into his heart like a dark wine. Every spell of control, every shadowborn creation, did not strengthen him, it hollowed him out, until only a shell remained. Zachary looked upon that creature of hatred and saw, for a moment, a reflection of pain he knew himself. It was not about strength, he realized. It was about remembering. She closed the book. It's not just an adventure, Kai. It's about loss. It's about how the stories we tell can be bridges or prisons. Your father wasn't stealing. He was translating. Turning Finn's Penand, his own, into something others could use. She held the book out to him. Read it. The answers you're looking for about your father aren't in a medical file. They're in here. He held the book as if it were venomous. But that night, in the heavy quiet of his apartment, he opened it. And the world of Dylan Ross swallowed him whole. It wasn't the childish fairy tale he'd always imagined. It was dark, aching, beautifully written. Neverchus breathed. The creatures had history. And Zachary wasn't a brave hero. He was scared, confused, dragged into a quest he didn't understand out of love for a father who had vanished. Every page felt familiar in a way that made Kai's chest ache. The boy's fear was his fear. The landscape was the landscape of his childhood dreams, and Gareth. Gareth wasn't a fire-breathing monster. He was the embodiment of despair. He read until morning. When he closed the book, his eyes burned and his heart was in disarray. He had spent a lifetime condemning his father's escape. Only now did he realize, maybe it hadn't been escape at all. Maybe it was a map, guide to the territory of pain. Both his father and Finn had lived in one, escaped through pages, the other through fantasy. The next morning, Kai went to find Finn with new resolve. He found him in the walled courtyard, sitting beneath a leafless tree, watching birds. Gabriel, Kai said, taking a seat beside him. Finn. The man turned. His eyes seemed brighter in daylight. I read my father's book, Kai said plainly. A spark lit in those blue depths, and he knew Neverwas saw it. How? Finn looked toward the hills, his voice taking on a distant storyteller rhythm. He came to me. At first he was like the others with his notepad and pity. But then he started asking the right questions. Not how do you feel? What does the dripthorn fruit taste like? Finn glanced at Kai, a flash of sharp intelligence crossing his face. It was poisonous, of course. A king must know what dangers lie within his realm. He went there? Kai asked. To the Moss Stone? Yes, many times. I gave him the directions. He'd disappear for days. He'd come back with shining eyes, full of questions about the Growlix or the bend in the Crooked Neck River. Finn's voice softened. He was a good scribe. He told me he'd bring the spirit of Niverus to the world, so I wouldn't be so alone. Kai's throat tightened. The narrative of exploitation shattered, replaced by something more complicated. A collaboration between two wounded men. Why did he stop coming? Kai whispered. Finn's face closed, pain slamming back into place. The darkness caught him. Not the darkness, it never was the one here. The voiceless pit. Gareth is no wizard in a tower, boy. He's the silence that drags you under. Finn looked at him, eyes full of a grief so old it felt fossilized. Your father began to see him everywhere, in the shadows of this place, in his wife's face, in his own son's eyes. He stopped dreaming. And when a king stops dreaming, his kingdom dies. The words rang like a bell in Kai's skull. The voiceless pit. His father's last months. The attic. The door. He's gone, Finn said softly. And the prophecy was left undone, till now. Kai could no longer tell where delusion ended and truth began. Finn wasn't a madman, he was a survivor. A man who had chosen to inhabit a world where his pain had meaning. Where he had a purpose, instead of sinking into the silent void that swallowed Dylan Ross. What do I do? The question escaped Kai's lips. Not as a clinician, but as a supplicant. For the first time, Finn looked at him directly, truly. Looked at the gaze pierced through years of fog. You're already doing it. You're remembering. But memory isn't enough. You must choose. In 7 days, when the full moon rises above the Moss Stone, Gareth's minions will strike. They sense my weakness. His voice hardened. You must come. You must help me defend it. Defend what? A shack? A fantasy? No, Finn said simply. The only place where my hands don't tremble and my head doesn't whisper, they want to take it from me. To drag me back into the dark. You know the dark, Zachary. You watched it swallow your father. Kai understood. With sudden, cutting clarity. He understood everything. This wasn't a quest to save a king in a fairy tale. It was a quest to save a man from despair. And maybe in doing that, save the part of himself still trapped behind that attic door. "Where is the moss stone?" Kai asked, his voice steady. A real smile, thin, fragile, but real, touched Finn's face. He gave directions not like a delusional patient, but like a seasoned guide. The creek behind the old factory, the hidden trail behind the pioneer cemetery, the twisted tree shaped like a witch's face, the clearing where the afternoon light struck a broad emerald moss stone, large enough for a man to slip behind. Kai memorized everything. He had a map now, for two worlds collapsing into one. As he left the courtyard, Dr. Shaw intercepted him in the hallway. Her face was tight, her tone clipped. "Kai, I've been told you and Mr. Finch have been engaging in extended private conversations outside supervised sessions." "I'm building rapport," he said reflexively. "I'm removing you from Finn's case," she said flatly, "and prohibiting any contact outside group. Your involvement is harming his treatment." "Harming?" Kai laughed, a humorless sound. "Dr. Shaw, he's opening up. He's giving me coordinates. He's telling me the truth about my father. That's more progress than he's made in 40 years. It's fantasy," she snapped. "And you're feeding it. You think I don't see what's happening? You're losing yourself, Kai. You're projecting your unresolved grief onto a severely ill man. Tomorrow morning, my office. We discuss your future here. Till then, distance." She turned and walked away, her footsteps heavy with finality. Kai stood there, fury rising. They wanted to confine him just as they confined Finn inside rules, diagnoses, and a safe little reality with no room for kings or sons trying to mend the past. He wasn't going to her office tomorrow. He had a meeting to keep on a map. He found Maya at her grandmother's house, sorting leaf samples. Told her everything. The ban, Finn's directions, his decision. "You're going there? To the moss stone?" she asked, eyes wide. "I have to. He'll be there alone. It's dangerous, Kai. Those woods, those hills. He's not stable. He's more sane than any of us." Kai Sedand meant it. "He knows who he is and what he loves. When's the last time you could say the same?" Maya fell quiet, fingers brushing a bright red maple leaf. "Then I'm going with you." "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "I know those forests. You need someone anchored to this world in case you decide not to come back." She stood, meeting his eyes. "You're not doing this alone. Your father went alone. And look what happened. Finn has been alone for 40 years. Maybe the point was never a lone hero. Maybe it was always about finding your traveling company." He wanted to argue, but her words resonated. The traveling company. Zachary had Sebastian the flying pig. His father had Finn. Who did Kai have? He looked at Maya, her stubborn resolve, her quiet worry, and realized she was his anchor. And maybe he needed one. "Okay," he said, the word a mix of surrender and relief. "Okay, we'll find the moss stone." The plan was fragile. The meeting would be at the full moon, 3 days away. Kai spent the days in silent preparation. He gathered supplies, flashlight, rope, warm clothes, food, studied Finn's directions until he could recite them backward. And secretly, he searched the clinic attic where confiscated items were stored. In a dusty box labeled Finch G, he found what he was looking for: an old tin flask, and wrapped in cloth, a set of Finn's bombs, bottles filled with thick amber liquid, rags for wicks, sugar water, his weapons against Gareth's minions. Kai took the flask and one bottle. Talismans. The night before the meeting, he couldn't sleep. Sitting at his kitchen table, he opened Niverwas to the final page, the epilogue he always avoided. And though Zachary left Niverwas in peace, he carried its spirit with him. The light he rekindled there was not a fire meant for a single hearth, but a spark to be carried in mind and heart. For Neverwas was never just a place behind a stone. It was the courage to see beauty where others saw darkness, the strength to believe in a truth of your own when the world shouted otherwise. And that, he learned, was a kingdom no one could ever take from him. The words burned through him. It wasn't a neat, happy ending. It was a manifesto. A legacy. Not an escape. A testament. He looked out the window, toward the black hills against the night sky. Somewhere out there, Finn would be awake to watching, guarding, waiting for his rescuer. Kairos was no longer trying to prove the fantasy wasn't real. He was preparing to walk toward it, to defend its last fragile believer. He didn't know if he would find a magical kingdom, but he knew he would find a man who believed in it with all his fractured soul. And, for the first time in his adult life, that felt like the most important thing in the world. The line between caring and believing was gone. Tomorrow at sundown, he would cross to the other side. End of part 2. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel and receive more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching until the end.